A black single mother took in a boy for just one night without knowing he was the son of a powerful cartel leader. You truly believe you can take advantage of my son and get away with it? Lorenzo Volkov's cold voice echoed through the phone as Amelia held the receiver with trembling hands. I'm going to destroy you and your worthless family. Amelia Vance, 34. A black woman who worked as a night shift nurse, never imagined that a simple act of kindness would turn into the biggest nightmare of her life. 3 weeks earlier, during a violent storm, she had found a young man soaked and frightened on the street. Without hesitation, she offered him shelter in her modest home, where she lived with her 7-year-old white son, Julian. The boy introduced himself as Alex, a college student who had lost his wallet and cell phone. For 2 weeks, he lived with them as a family, helping with household chores, playing with Julian, and forming genuine bonds. Amelia never suspected that Alex was actually Alexander Volkov, the heir to a criminal empire valued at $250 million. Mommy, who's yelling on the phone? Julian appeared in the kitchen, still in his pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Amelia forced a reassuring smile as she hung up, but her heart was racing. Volkov's threats had been clear: kidnapping charges, the destruction of her career, and the loss of custody of Julian. What Lorenzo Volkov didn't know was that Amelia had meticulously documented every moment of Alexander's stay. Not because she was suspicious, but because she worked with hospital protocols and was in the habit of recording everything, every conversation, every tear of gratitude from the young man, every moment of genuine affection between him and Julian. Everything was carefully filed away. When Alexander left that morning, leaving only a handwritten thank you note, Amelia never imagined that 3 days later, her life would be turned upside down. The first sign came when she was called to the hospital's boardroom. We received an anonymous complaint about your inappropriate behavior outside of work, said the supervisor, avoiding her eyes. As Amelia watched the security guards search her apartment under a suspicious court order, something in her expression remained strangely serene. Julian clung to her leg, confused and frightened. But she simply stroked his hair and whispered, "Don't worry, son. Some very powerful people are about to find out that they have completely underestimated the wrong woman." If you're enjoying this story of injustice and don't want to miss the moment the truth comes out, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will show you that even the richest can be brought down by a simple recording. The persecution from Lorenzo Volkov didn't take long to intensify. The next day, Amelia received a notification from Julian's school informing her that his tuition had been blocked due to pending legal issues. The same happened with her health insurance, bank account, and even the financing for her small apartment. "Mommy, why did the lady at school say I can't eat in the cafeteria anymore?" Julian asked as Amelia drove him home. His innocent eyes reflected confusion and fear, feelings she never wanted her son to experience because of her kindness. Amelia hugged the boy tightly, feeling the weight of injustice burn in her chest. Lorenzo Volkov was using his financial power as a weapon, systematically cutting off every aspect of Amelia's life. The man didn't just want revenge. He wanted to completely destroy an innocent family. The call came at 2 a.m. "See how easy it is to dismantle your pathetic little life?" Volkov's voice dripped with venom. "Tomorrow, I'm canceling the rest of your contracts. In a week, you'll be out on the street. And that's just the beginning." What Volkov didn't know was that Amelia had grown up in the system, surviving a childhood that tried to break her at the age of 5. She knew intimately the feeling of having everything brutally ripped away, of being underestimated by people who judged her worth based solely on her skin color and the absence of an important last name. "My father built an empire from scratch," Volkov continued, his arrogance overflowing through the phone. "You're just another freeloader trying to hold on to what isn't yours." Alex was vulnerable, confused, and you took advantage of the situation. Amelia remained silent, letting the man reveal every layer of prejudice and privilege that shaped his worldview. Every word was being recorded on the app she had discreetly downloaded after the first threat, a habit developed over years of working in hospital environments, where documentation was a matter of life and death. People like you, Volkov spat out the words, need to be reminded of their place in society. You thought you could play happy family with a Volkov? My son is worth more than you could ever hope to earn in 10 lifetimes. The next morning, Amelia received an unexpected visitor. A civil rights lawyer she had met years ago knocked on her door with a determined look on her face. I've heard rumors about your situation, she said, stepping inside without waiting for Amelia to invite her in. Lorenzo Volkov isn't just known for his wealth, Amelia. He has a history of using legal intimidation to silence people he considers unsuitable for his family. The lawyer revealed that this wasn't the first time Volkov had gone after someone. A few years earlier, he had financially ruined a young artist who had fallen in love with his niece. The pattern is always the same, the lawyer explained, spreading documents across Amelia's coffee table. Threats, financial persecution, legal pressure, until the person disappears from their lives. And it always works, because his victims are ordinary people, without the resources to fight back. Amelia looked at the papers, then at her son, playing quietly in the corner of the room, clearly sensing the tension in the air. Something in her expression changed, not to despair or fear, but to a cold determination that the lawyer recognized immediately. He doesn't know who he's messing with, Amelia muttered, a small spark of something dangerous flashing in her eyes. People like Volkov live in such privileged bubbles that they forget there are other kinds of power besides money. While Lorenzo Volkov quietly celebrated what he believed to be another easy victory against an inferior family, Amelia discreetly opened a folder on her computer. 2 years of meticulous documentation of every moment Alexander had spent in her home. Every tear of gratitude. Every genuine smile exchanged with Julian. A story completely different from the version his billionaire father had constructed in his prejudiced mind. Each new threat only strengthened something inside her that her oppressors couldn't see. A silent force fueled by the very injustice they tried to impose. Preparing to reveal truths that would shake the Volkov empire to its gilded foundations. Amelia spent the next 3 days working discreetly with the civil rights lawyer, turning her small apartment into a makeshift operations center. While Julian slept, they analyzed every recording, every document, every digital footprint Volkov had left behind during his threats. Look at this. The lawyer pointed to the laptop screen, her eyes shining with discovery. Volkov has used the exact same intimidation tactics in at least 4 cases over the last 5 years. Always following the same script: financial isolation, legal pressure, and systematic harassment. What they had uncovered was a frightening pattern. Lorenzo Volkov wasn't just a protective father. He was a social predator who used his wealth as a weapon against anyone he deemed unfit for his family. Each victim had been silenced through million-dollar settlements, accompanied by confidentiality clauses. But this time, he made a mistake. Amelia muttered, reviewing the recordings of the threatening calls. He assumed I would be another easy victim, that I would cave in at the first sign of pressure. Volkov's persecution intensified dramatically. The next morning, Amelia discovered that her professional license had been temporarily suspended due to a mysterious ethical investigation. Her bank account was frozen for suspicious activity, and her apartment landlord received an anonymous call about troublesome tenants. "Mommy, why were those men taking pictures of our house?" Julian asked while clinging to her leg. Amelia had noticed the private investigators circling the block, documenting her every move, every person who visited her home. But Lorenzo Volkov had completely underestimated who she was dealing with. Amelia wasn't just a dedicated nurse. She had grown up navigating complex welfare systems, learning from a young age to meticulously document every official interaction. Her experience with hospital protocols had turned this skill into a silent weapon. "He's trying to break me financially before any legal proceedings," Amelia explained to the lawyer during one of their evening meetings. "But his every move is being recorded, every threat documented." "He's building our case against himself." The lawyer smiled with growing admiration. "You realize we have enough material not just for criminal charges, but for a civil suit that could cost him millions?" The decisive moment came when Amelia received a direct call from Alexander, the first since he had left. His voice was heavy with tears and despair. "Amelia, I need to talk to you. My father is saying horrible things about you and Julian. He's planning something terrible." He paused, clearly fighting for words. "He's hired people to plant evidence in your house." Amelia felt her blood run cold, but her voice remained calm. "Alex, are you okay? Where are you now?" "I'm hiding in his office. I overheard a phone conversation. He's going to try to frame you for kidnapping and worse things, Amelia. You have to get out of there. Take Julian and get out of town." Amelia looked at the lawyer, who had heard the entire conversation on speakerphone. She nodded. She was also recording everything. "Alex, listen carefully. Don't do anything that could put you in danger. But if you can document these conversations." "I'm already doing that," he whispered. "For weeks I have recordings, emails, messages. Amelia, my father isn't just cruel. He's dangerous. He's ruined so many people." The call was abruptly cut off, but the revelation completely changed the game. Now, it wasn't just Amelia and her lawyer against a powerful billionaire. They had an ally on the inside, someone with direct access to Volkov's strategies and evidence. That night, Amelia put Julian to bed with a serenity he hadn't seen in days. He noticed the change in his mother. "Mommy, you seem less worried today." Amelia kissed his forehead gently. "Sometimes, sweetheart, when very bad people try to hurt good people, they end up hurting themselves. And Mommy is just waiting for that to happen." In the kitchen, the lawyer organized documents with an efficiency that impressed Amelia. "Do you realize what we have here?" she said, pointing to the piles of evidence. "This isn't just a case of harassment or intimidation. It's a criminal pattern of conspiracy, extortion, and abuse of power." Amelia nodded, but her eyes revealed something deeper. "I grew up being underestimated my whole life. By teachers, by bosses, by a system that saw me as just another young black woman with no future. I learned that the best defense isn't to fight back with anger. It's to let others reveal who they really are. And Volkov is revealing much more than he realizes." The lawyer agreed, smiling. As they organized the last pieces of evidence for the night, Amelia received a text message from an unknown number. It was Alexander. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m., he's going to plant drugs in your house. I have a recording of him ordering it. Don't be there." Amelia showed the message to the lawyer, who immediately began making calls. "Let's turn his trap into our biggest victory," she said, her eyes shining with determination. For a moment, when Amelia looked out the window and saw the investigators still circling her street, everyone would have thought they were witnessing yet another easy victory for a billionaire over a humble family. But anyone who looked closely at the serene smile on Amelia's face would have noticed that it wasn't resignation that moved her. It was the quiet confidence of someone who was about to turn her oppressor's arrogance into the weapon of his own destruction. At 9:45 a.m., Amelia sat calmly in a van parked 3 blocks from her home, watching multiple computer screens that transmitted live images from every room in her apartment. The lawyer had organized a professional surveillance system during the night with hidden cameras in strategic angles. "They're here," she whispered, pointing to one of the screens showing 2 men dressed as maintenance technicians approaching the back door. One of them was carrying a toolbox that looked suspiciously heavy for a simple plumbing job. Amelia adjusted the headphones connected to the directional microphones that had been discreetly installed. Every word, every movement was being recorded in high definition with automatic timestamps and GPS locations. "Are you sure the big guy isn't home?" asked the first man as he forced the lock with a professional master key. "Volkov confirmed that she's at work until noon," replied the second, removing 3 small plastic packages from the toolbox. "Let's spread these all over the house. The kids' room, the kitchen, under the mattress. The more obvious, the better." Amelia clenched her fists, but kept her breathing under control. Julian was safe at the lawyer's house, completely unaware of the horror his mother was witnessing unfold in her home. At 10:05, exactly as Alexander had predicted, Lorenzo Volkov called the local police station directly. "I have information about suspicious drug activity at apartment 17 on Maple Street," he said, using a slightly disguised voice. "I believe there is a child in immediate danger." What Volkov didn't know was that Amelia's lawyer had anticipated this move. Through her contacts in the judicial system, she had discreetly alerted the Department of Internal Affairs about a possible evidence-planting operation involving a local billionaire. When the police arrived at Amelia's apartment, they didn't just find the planted drugs. They also found the 2 technicians still on the scene. An active security camera streaming everything live to civil rights lawyers, and crystal-clear audio recordings of Lorenzo Volkov coordinating the entire operation. "Mr. Volkov," Detective Morrison said on the phone, his voice laden with a professional coldness that made the billionaire immediately realize that something had gone wrong. "We need to talk now." Volkov's first reaction was to try to use his usual influence. "Detective, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. I'm Lorenzo Volkov of Volkov Holdings. Perhaps we should schedule a meeting through my attorneys." "Mr. Volkov," Morrison interrupted him, "you are under formal investigation for conspiracy, planting evidence, attempted framing of an innocent person, and a list of other charges that your attorneys can explain in detail. I suggest you come voluntarily." Meanwhile, across town, Amelia watched in real time as the empire Volkov had used as a weapon against innocent families was meticulously dismantled. The lawyer had coordinated a multi-pronged operation that went far beyond simple defense. The recordings of the threatening phone calls have already been sent to the district attorney's office, the lawyer explained, showing a checklist on her tablet. "The financial documents Alex provided us revealed 3 other identical cases in the last 5 years. And best of all," she smiled, opening a new screen, "the media already has everything. Channel 7 News, the Tribune, even the Washington Herald. The story will be on all networks." At 6 p.m., Amelia watched the images of Volkov being escorted out of his corporate building by federal agents. The man who had terrorized her family for weeks now walked with his head bowed, surrounded by reporters and cameras, his arrogance transformed into palpable despair. Amelia's phone rang. It was Alexander. His voice was choked but relieved. "Amelia, I did it. I have recordings of at least 10 calls where he plans to destroy innocent people. I have emails, bank transfers, everything. Alex, are you safe?" Amelia asked, genuinely concerned for the young man who had risked everything to expose his own father's crimes. "I'm moving to my aunt's house in Seattle," he replied. "But before I go, I wanted you to know that those 2 weeks at your house were the first time in my life I felt like I was part of a real family. Julian is lucky to have you as a mother." At 6 p.m., Amelia was at home with Julian, watching the news while they prepared dinner together. The top story showed Lorenzo Volkov being indicted on multiple federal charges. Billionaire businessman arrested for conspiracy and systematic persecution of vulnerable families, announced the anchor. Documents obtained exclusively by our station reveal a pattern of abuse of power that spans more than a decade. Julian looked at his mother, confused. "Mommy, is that the man who was being mean to us?" Amelia turned off the television and knelt down to her son's height. "Yes, sweetheart. But now he can't hurt our family, or any other family anymore." "How did you know everything would turn out okay?" Julian asked, with the innocent curiosity of a 7-year-old. Amelia smiled, thinking of all the nights she had spent awake documenting every threat, every move Volkov had made, patiently building the case that had just destroyed a corrupt empire. "Sometimes, son, when very bad people try to hurt good people, they end up hurting themselves. Mommy just helped that happen a little faster." That night, after Julian fell asleep, Amelia received a call from the lawyer. "Amelia, do you have any idea what you've done? Volkov didn't just lose his company. The board voted unanimously to remove him. His accounts have been frozen pending a federal investigation, and 3 other families he had persecuted are filing million-dollar civil suits." Amelia looked out the window of her small apartment, the same place where it had all begun when she took in a frightened young boy during a storm. 3 months later, the man who had tried to destroy her life out of pure prejudice was facing the complete ruin of everything he had built through intimidation and abuse of power. But the real victory was not Volkov's downfall. It was the fact that Amelia had protected her son, preserved her dignity, and proven that justice knows no color, social class, or bank account. It only requires courage, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to accept that injustice is inevitable. While Lorenzo Volkov spent his first night in a cell, reflecting on how he had completely underestimated a black nurse from the suburbs, Amelia kissed Julian's forehead and silently planned the next steps in their lives. Because when the storm passes, it's time to rebuild everything even stronger than before. 6 months after the collapse of the Volkov empire, Amelia Vance was sitting in her new office. No longer the small apartment where it had all begun, but a large, bright space that reflected a complete transformation in her circumstances. The desk in front of her was covered with contracts, job offers, and invitations to speak at universities across the country. "Mom, did you see it's in the paper again?" Julian came running in, holding the morning edition of the Tribune. The headline read, "Nurse who stood up to corrupt billionaire opened Civil Rights Institute." Her son, now 8 years old, had blossomed in recent months, his natural confidence and joy completely restored after the dark period of persecution. Amelia smiled, taking the paper and looking at the photo, showing the facade of the Amelia Vance Institute for Social Justice, an organization she had founded with the millions in damages she had won from Volkov and donations from supporters around the world. What had begun as a simple personal defense had turned into a national movement against corporate abuse of power. "The lawyer is here," Julian announced, pointing to her walking down the hall with a stack of documents. The lawyer had become not only her partner at the Institute, but one of the most respected civil rights advocates in the country after the Volkov case. "Amelia, we have news about our friend Sepper back," she said, sitting down at the table with an expression of contained satisfaction. Lorenzo Volkov was officially declared bankrupt yesterday. The last of his assets were auctioned off to pay compensation to the families he persecuted. Amelia nodded silently. Over the past few months, she had discreetly followed the systematic dismantling of Volkov's life. First came the criminal charges that resulted in 3 years in prison. Then came the civil suits that drained every penny of his fortune. Finally, complete social isolation. Former friends, business associates, and even family members abandoned him when the extent of his crimes became public. "He tried to contact me again," the lawyer continued. "3rd letter this month. He keeps trying to negotiate some kind of deal, offering information about other influential people involved in similar schemes." Amelia looked out the window of her office, which overlooked the park where Julian played during breaks. People like Volkov never really understand what they did wrong, she muttered. They just regret getting caught. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was an international call. Oxford University offering her a chair in social justice studies based on her pioneering work, documenting institutional abuse of power. Amelia had inadvertently become one of the world's leading experts on how individuals can effectively confront systemic corruption. "Are you going to London, Mom?" Julian asked, overhearing part of the conversation. "Just for a few months," Amelia replied, stroking his hair. "To teach other people how to defend themselves when powerful people try to hurt them." Meanwhile, across town, Lorenzo Volkov sat in his small prison cell, surrounded by newspaper clippings documenting his downfall. Each headline was a painful reminder of how he had completely underestimated a black nurse from the suburbs. His lawyers had abandoned the case when he could no longer afford their fees. His wife had divorced him and moved to another state under a new name. His children refused to take his calls. The most brutal irony was that Volkov, who had spent decades using his wealth to silence people he considered inferior, now depended on the charity of the prison system for his basic needs. The man who once owned 3 mansions now shared a 6-foot space with a cellmate who treated him with the same contempt he had shown vulnerable families. On the afternoon of that same Friday, Amelia received an unexpected visitor. Alexander Volkov, now using his mother's surname, Morrison, knocked on the door of her institute. He had changed dramatically in recent months, his appearance reflecting a confidence and purpose he had never shown during his years as a privileged heir. "I wanted to thank you in person," he said, sitting down in the institute's reception room. "Not just for protecting me, but for showing me that there are people willing to do what's right, even when it costs them everything." Alexander explained that he had used his remaining inheritance, the assets he had managed to preserve before his father's bankruptcy, to establish a fund to support families who were victims of corporate persecution. He was studying law and planned to devote his career to cases similar to Amelia's. "My father always told me that people like you were different, inferior," he said, his tears reflecting years of personal growth. "It took me 22 years to understand that the only person who was inferior was him and me for believing his lies." Julian, who had just returned from school, entered the room and immediately recognized Alexander. "Alex!" he cried, running to hug him. To the little boy, Alexander would always be the kind young man who had shared his pancake mornings and Lego afternoons. Amelia watched the reunion with a mixture of emotion and satisfaction. Her decision to take in a frightened young boy during a storm had set off a series of events that not only protected her family, but had created waves of positive change that spread far beyond her personal circumstances. That night, after Alexander left and Julian went to bed, Amelia sat alone in her office, reviewing the Institute's reports. In just 6 months, they had helped 43 families confront abuses of power, resulting in total damages of over $8 million and the arrest of 12 corrupt executives. Her phone rang once more. It was a CNN reporter requesting an interview for a documentary on the Volkov case that would be broadcast nationally. Amelia declined politely, as she did with most media requests. Her victory had not been about fame or recognition. It had been about protecting her son and proving that justice knows no class or bank account. When Amelia closed her eyes that night, her last thoughts were not about Lorenzo Volkov rotting in a prison cell, or about the millions of dollars her institute was bringing in, or even about the prestigious offers that arrived weekly from universities around the world. She thought about a storm on a cold night, about a frightened young man who needed help, and about her instinctive decision to open her front door. That simple choice, to show kindness to a stranger, had become the foundation for everything that followed. Amelia had learned that true revenge is not destroying those who hurt you. It is building something so meaningful and powerful that it renders any damage they tried to cause irrelevant. Lorenzo Volkov had tried to break a humble family, but he ended up creating a movement that would protect thousands of other families in the future. Julian slept peacefully in his room, secure in the knowledge that his mother was a woman the world respected and admired. He would grow up knowing that strength doesn't come from how much money you have, or how powerful your enemies are. It comes from always doing what's right, even when it costs everything, and especially when everyone assumes you don't have the power to fight back. The best revenge, Amelia had discovered, is to build a life so full of purpose and impact that those who tried to destroy you become nothing more than irrelevant footnotes in the story of your victory. And while Volkov languished in obscurity and failure, Amelia knew that every new family protected by her institute was further proof that kindness, when combined with courage and intelligence, always triumphs over corrupt privilege. If this story of justice and overcoming adversity has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because in the real world, stories like Amelia's are happening every day, proving that anyone can stand up to injustice and win as long as they have the courage to document the truth and the wisdom to turn suffering into strength to protect others.